It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Well, hello. How is everybody doing? How come it seems that every time I come in my office, no matter how much time I prepare, something is tweaked? Like my microphone is like goofy or something, like someone leaned on it. I don't know. Now I'm going to try adjusting it and then it's going to mess everything up, right? It's all good. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Welcome to the HVACR videos live stream. So I know, I'm broadcasting on a lot of new social media platforms, and I know there's a lot of new people attending these live streams. So forgive me, the people that are regulars. I recognize you guys are all here. I'm going to do a little introduction, okay? So my name is Chris. I'm an HVACR service technician here in Southern California, and I started making YouTube videos as a training aid for my employees. This is the Cliff Notes, okay? I reluctantly hit the public button. It grew into a thing. Here we are like 5 years later. And I do these Q&A question and answer live streams to kind of consolidate the questions, because I put out a lot of video, a lot of content on all kinds of different social media platforms. And I get like a ton of redundant like questions that people ask the same things all the time. So I try to consolidate those questions into a live stream, and then people tend to also send me emails that I answer in the live format too. So I have a bunch of questions here in front of me. If you guys do have questions or comments, do me a favor, put them into the chat and put them in caps lock. That helps me to see them. You may have to repeat it because there's a bunch of people watching on all the different social media platforms. We're a couple different Facebook pages, groups, Instagram, or no, we're not on Instagram. We're on YouTube, LinkedIn, And I think that's it. But anyway, so just throw them in caps lock. Okay. Do me a favor, those that are watching, if you guys could smash the thumbs up button on whatever social media platform you're on. Majority of the people tend to be on YouTube, but you know, it's fine if you're watching on Facebook or whatever. Just smash the thumbs up button, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it is. Just kind of helps the social media platform to realize that I'm actually here, because they notice a lot of interaction and stuff. Okay. So if I miss any questions, you can feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. And now that we've gone through that, let's get on with the show. No, I'm just kidding. All right, cool. So I am doing pretty good over here. I'm getting ready for the AHR trade show. So AHR goes on next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but I am actually flying out this upcoming Friday, fly to Atlanta and have a whole bunch of pre-AHR events. Going to be attending the Solder Weld HVAC Tactical Awards, or the HVAC Tactical Awards, I guess, hosted by Solder Weld, I think is what you're supposed to say. But anyways, I'm going to the HVAC Tactical Awards on Sunday. Then I'm going to be doing the trade show itself Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'll be spending a bunch of time at the Sporlan booth, and then also at the Refrigeration Technologies booth. I'll be spending some time there too, seeing my good friend John Pastorello, Mike Pastorello. Hope to see them all. But anyways, if you guys happen to make it to the AHR trade show, definitely stop me if you see me. Follow me on social media, and I'll be announcing like the different places that I'll be. There's also going to be all sorts of events. We already know that tentatively we're doing some sort of a meetup with some other social media creators the Saturday before. So we haven't figured anything out yet. I need to start reaching out to people, but I know I had a few other social media creators that were interested. So if you are going to be in the downtown Atlanta area, possibly on Saturday, again, reach out to me, pay attention to my social media. We'll be announcing somewhere that we'll be going and just having a hangout or something like that. So I hope that I see you guys at AHR if you do make it. I tend to walk around when I'm at shows like that. I have a bunch of obligations, like spending time at certain booths and stuff. I encourage you guys 100%, as long as I'm not holding a camera in my hand, I encourage you to walk up and interrupt me. I don't care who I'm talking with. Okay. So walk up, say, hey, you know, politely, obviously, but say, hey, stop me, talk to me. Okay. I tend to get tunnel vision when I'm at those events, like I said. So sometimes I walk with a mission and I don't pay attention to anything around me. Make sure you stop me, say, hey, man, you know, and talk, have a conversation. Okay. So I look forward to seeing you guys at the AHR trade show. Just kind of getting ready for that. And I just wrapped up a big project at work. So that was a fun one. Unfortunately, there's not going to be a video on it for various reasons. I couldn't make a video, but it's a very fun project. I showed a little bit of a glimpse of it, and it was a hood control conversion. So I had a smart hood system. Long story short, the customer realized that the smart hood system cost them way too much money, didn't save them any money. They wanted me to rip out all the smart hood controls. So when I say smart hood controls, this was a Maylink IntelliHood system. So it had optical sensors, it had variable frequency drives, it has temperature sensors, and it slows down and speeds up the exhaust fans dependent on the demand. So some of the hoods look at the smoke as it crosses a beam, and if it interrupts the beam, then it speeds the fans up. Some fans work off of temperature. If it senses a high temperature, it speeds the fans up. So anyways, it's a cool system, but it just became not cost effective for the customer, and they had me bypass it. But it wasn't just a simple bypass, okay? Because I had to set up the entire hood system to operate just like the smart hood system with all the safeties built into it. So I installed 2 power switches, one for the lights and one for the hood fan. So now they just have on-off switches. And we have 4 motor starters, 4 relays. And amidst all of that, we are interconnected into the fire suppression system. So if the fire suppression system shuts off, I showed, you know, reels and Instagram clips, and I showed a clip of it on the HVAC Overtime. So I'm sure you can find the whole hood package. But that was a long process for me, because I think it took 4 days. And the reason why it took 4 days was because the restaurant was completely functional the entire time. So we could only work from the hours from 7 a.m. till about 10:30 a.m. And then we had to leave because they needed to open their kitchen. So it was just a bunch of back and forth, getting it all going. but I finally wrapped it up Friday, I think. Last Friday, I think. So that was I'm glad to be done with that. And there's like a bunch more that need to be done. So it's like a whole thing, but getting pretty good at them, you know, just having to go in, and we have certain procedures that we do. So it's a fun project. But like I said, unfortunately, there's not going to be a video just because of some various reasons, but I'm sure I'll make some sort of a, you know, like an instructional video, maybe just not an on-site one. We'll do something like that. So, but I hope that you guys are all doing well. As usual, got a couple things I want to cover. I'm going to look at the chat right now, and let's see what else we got going on in here. Donald Baker says, Sensi Predict is overpriced and full of ridiculous agreements. Donald Baker, I actually have a Sensi Predict down here that I bought with my own money for my own house, and I never installed it. In all honesty, I installed the thermostat, and it sat on my wall for about 8 months, and I really didn't like the functionality and the look of it. So I ended up installing an Ecobee thermostat, and I have the whole Sensi Predict hardware. I'm supposed to send it to one of my friends, but it's just sitting there. Never used it. Don't know much about it. I think it's a couple bucks a month or something like that. So Oscar says, do I have Spanish speaking customers? If so, how do I communicate with them? You know, there's a funny thing, Oscar. So one of my guys that works for me, I don't think you're watching right now, but you know who you are. It's funny because he is like totally Hispanic, right? You cannot doubt that he is Hispanic, but he doesn't speak a lick of Spanish. So it is hilarious for me to be in a restaurant and watch the kitchen staff walk up to him and just start going into a conversation with him, and watching his eyes be like, and it's just funny to watch him say, yeah, I don't speak Spanish. And it's just, yeah, that's a whole thing. But no, I work in kitchens in Southern California. So there's a good majority of Hispanic people that speaks, you know, solely Spanish. I do not know Spanish. I do not speak Spanish. I can understand just enough to kind of get an idea. But yeah, we don't really have anybody like restaurant. Usually there's a manager there or someone that can speak English. So yeah, I've never run into that. That's actually one of my regrets, is not learning Spanish. I really wish I did know Spanish, because it would help me so much in my career for sure. So, and it's good to know multiple languages anyways. We encourage our kids, like, my gosh, learn as many languages as you can. So what was the one job site where I was on thin ice about walking away or hated the most? Heidi D. So there was a job, I've talked about this before. This was one that I actually walked away from the job. It was a giant Indian casino near me, but I wasn't working for the casino. I was working for a sub. Let's see, what it wasn't. I wasn't working for the general contractor. The general contractor hired a contractor that subbed me out because they didn't know what they were doing. And I walked into the job and realized it was a giant cluster. Nobody knew what was going on. We were going to have to work on the gaming floor. It was a nightmare. Long story short, I ended up solving a lot of their problems, correcting by looking at the plans, realizing that what they had planned and purchased and engineered for wasn't going to work. So then I got them to change all that for free, by the way, in the end, and fixed all those problems. And then the night that I went to go do the work and install the equipment and run line sets, I'm literally standing, pushing through the hallways of the casino with a scissor lift. And when I get to the floor, I walk out to the floor to the tables that were supposed to be moved, and they weren't moved, and they were gaming at the tables. You know, it was the middle of the night, and I had to get the casino boss involved, and they were like, we're never going to shut these tables down. But it was told to me that it was just a giant mess. And amidst that and all the other problems, that night, I very quietly packaged up all my materials because I'd heard some really, really bad rumors about Indian casinos, and the weird laws. Nothing bad about the Indian people or the native people that run the casino. It's just the rules, and everything's different on the casino property. I mean, on the, you know, the native land and everything, right? And so anyways, I ended up packaging up all my materials as quietly as I could, getting them on my truck, and bouncing out of there, and just calling the general contractor the next day and just saying I was done. Like, I was done with the job. That one gave me so much stress. All in all, in labor alone, we lost $5,000. So I was kind of bummed about that, but it was just, everything was building up, you know, and it was just like one thing irritated you, the next thing irritated you. And then finally the night that I went to go do all the work, and then they told me that it wasn't going to happen and just all that, I had it. I was just done, bounced out of there, told them get someone else. I hadn't signed any contracts or anything like that. So just got out of there. And then when I called the guy the next day, they were like, no, please, no, we'll make it work. And I was like, nope, we're done. I just knew better. Just walked away from that job. So, let's see what else we got going on here. Reading through the chat right now. Right on. Jason Johnson. I'm not going to confirm or deny what Indian casino it was because I just don't want to get in any kind of trouble. So let me see. Why is a smoke detector on an air mover and not on the units? I'm assuming that you on an air mover. I don't know what you mean by that, bud. Can you clarify that? Put it in caps lock down at the bottom again, and or send me an email because it might get lost in the chat. Okay. All right. So why is it that, well, I already answered that question, but I did want to talk about a Instagram reel, YouTube short that I put out, just a short form video about a service call on an exhaust fan and how I put a link belt on there to temporarily get it going. My goodness gracious. I have to say that one of the downsides to social media, okay, I appreciate everybody that watches my videos, and I appreciate all the people that get something from them, whether it is what not to do, what to do, you know, I appreciate all that. That's really cool. But with these social media companies forcing content creators to produce short form content, I'm being forced to do that. Okay. Not really what I like to do. Every once in a while, you might get something educational out, but I have to find a way to produce this short form content because they're not sharing normal videos anymore. It's like a whole thing. So I have to evolve or let everything move on without me. Right. So anyways, but one of the things that I noticed from doing short form content is it brings out the trolls, and I'm not afraid of people. It doesn't dig at me. It's just kind of annoying having to go through the chat and just watching. So the short form content gets showed to people that don't necessarily want to watch this, right? And they're just interested. So my goodness, the comments that came out about putting a link belt on there. So I'm going to address a few things that, you know, I think there was repetitive questions asked all the time. Why on earth don't I stock the right size belts on my truck? Well, here's the deal. My customers don't do routine maintenance. Okay. A good majority of them. I have a few that do, but majority of them don't do routine maintenance. And they don't get to choose what I stock on my truck. They have free will. Hey, Pat, thank you very much for that super chat from Commercial Kitchen Chronicles, Pat Finley. I really appreciate you, bud. Okay. I'm going to meet up with Pat at AHR. I think, Pat, you're going to be one of the people that's there on Saturday, right, Pat? I thought you said you were getting there early. If not, whatever. But anyways, go check out Commercial Kitchen Chronicles. Pat's a cool dude. So, but anyways, one of the things, why don't I, you know, my customers don't get to choose what I carry in my trucks. Okay. First and foremost. Second, everything that I buy in my truck and it sits in my truck for 6 months to a year is money that I could have used somewhere else. Okay. It's about maintaining inventory. Yes, having an inventory in the truck is good, but you don't want to have too much inventory. And belts are not something that get changed out on a monthly basis. For the most part, for the customers that don't do routine maintenance, we have to change belts every 3 to 6 months at those locations, okay, for various reasons. So for me to stock a belt in my truck to wait 3 months to use it is wasted money, okay? I'm trying to control what I carry in my truck. Plus, there's less chance of those parts getting ruined. Next thing, why don't I go to the auto parts store and get a belt? Worst case scenario, if I didn't have any other options, I would do whatever I have to do to get that equipment running. But I prefer to use my normal supply houses. If I buy my materials at one place consistently, when there's a problem, it's a lot easier to go back to that place. If I buy materials at 10 different supply houses, then I have to try to remember what supply house I bought it from. So again, also, I have employees. And do I really want my guys going to 10 different supply houses on a daily basis? No, because it's just wasted truck time, right? And also it makes it more and more difficult for people to consistently buy the same brands and the same parts. We like consistency across our company. We buy all the same temp controls, reach-ins. Everybody stocks their own stuff. Unfortunately, I mean, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but I don't let my guys go and buy whatever they want from the supply houses. We buy what we know we need. I take suggestions from my employees. If they think we should pick up a new item that they saw, I will definitely look into it and we'll have a conversation, but I don't let them just go to the supply house and buy whatever they want. So we try to control everything. You know, if I had to, I would go to an auto parts store, but I don't really want to waste time on a Saturday trying to find a belt back and forth. Not really my thing. So, okay, let's see what else we can go in the chat going on right now. All right, looks like just normal conversations. Let's see what else. I'm reading through the chat. Ike's in here right now on YouTube. What's up, bud? How you doing? Ike has been a channel supporter, and he's been an awesome friend of mine that's helped me do a lot of cool stuff. He helped me build my computer, and let me rephrase that. He built my computer, telling me, the idiot, what button to push and what screw to tighten. Okay, so Ike's a cool dude. So and he also runs a Discord server for this channel. It's the HVACR Videos Discord server. If any of you is interested in joining, shoot me an email. I'll get you the link. Okay. All right. So let's see what else we got going on in the chat. How is it that I wear long sleeve shirts all year long? Again, I can tell when I have new viewers to the channel because they don't realize that I work in extreme ambient conditions. I live and work in the Inland Empire of Southern California and the low desert of Southern California. So in the low desert, it can be in excess of 120 degrees in the summertime. And I have lots of videos showing me working in crazy heat, 115, 116, all the way up to 120 was the hottest I've ever worked in. And I wear long sleeve shirts all year long. How is it that I can wear a long sleeve shirt? Okay, so here's the first thing. I wear a black Under Armour sweat wicking t-shirt. Okay, every day it's my undershirts. Wear it underneath there. So actually, I'm wearing an undershirt and a long sleeve shirt. I wear Dickies. They're like polyester something or other, loose fit, long sleeve shirts. I want to keep the sun off my skin. Okay, I am deathly afraid of skin cancer and different things like that. So I really, you know, I used to wear short sleeves all the time, and I'd have a permanent farmer's tan even through the winter, and it just confused me. You know, it was just like, what's going on here? It just didn't seem right. Started wearing long sleeves. I actually stay cooler in long sleeve shirts. Couple key things though is we're in Southern California where it's not very humid at all. During the summer, oftentimes the relative humidity outside can be as low as 10%, sometimes 5%. Okay. It's extremely dry here. So that's one big key factor, because if it was super swampy and humid and over 100 degrees, it'd be a little difficult to be wearing long sleeve shirts for sure. Okay. Let's see. Let me see what is going on through the chat right now. Okay, cool. All right. Next thing is, I already discussed that question. Crossing things off my list right now. So, when I was doing a recent video, I had to change a compressor. It was my most recent video where I think it was, no, it was whatever. It was a video 2 videos ago, but I had a compressor replacement. And while I was changing the compressor, I had to remove a flare connection on a pressure control hose. And when I pulled that off, they had one of those plastic flare saver gaskets on there. And I had said I took that out because there was no need for it. I had a commenter that said that I was incorrect for taking that plastic bushing out, and that actually needed to be there because that's what seals the flare. Okay, so this is a refrigeration and air conditioning flare. This is not a chat lift fitting. This is not a compression nut. Okay, it doesn't require a gasket in there. When you take a refrigeration flare, the only thing you need is actually just a little bit of oil. Now, I happen to use Nylog, which is essentially refrigeration oil, but you don't need that gasket in there. I'm not saying that it won't work, because that gasket had been in there for quite a few years, but I typically don't use that kind of stuff. If you have a proper flare and you have a proper connection, there's no need for a gasket. Okay. I'm not saying that you're bad for using one. Okay. But I am telling you that on refrigeration and air conditioning flares, there does not have to be a plastic or a rubber gasket in there. You actually want a metal to metal connection on there. Okay. But it's also very careful. You have to be very sure that there's no damage to the flare or the flare nut or the threads when you're doing that. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat right now. All right. And let's see, I covered that question. Going through there, covered that one. Have some really good emailed questions that were sent today too. I'm about to get to them. Oh, this is a good one. Let's see. I had a commenter. I'm not going to reveal the name because I don't know if you want your name revealed. If you guys send me things that you want, questions or anything like that, if you can let me know if you want your name revealed, I will definitely try to do that if you guys send me emails. But sometimes I see questions and I'm like, yeah, maybe they don't want me to say their name, So anyways, this person is new and they have been working in commercial industrial. Okay. And this, he has been noticing that when he's on the roof, he's kind of confused because he'll see regular packaged air conditioning units, but he'll see them running with mechanical cooling, even though they have economizers. Okay. So the question that he's asking is why is that happening and what kind of problems can he see? He's specifically concerned about, and this is below 32 degrees, by the way. I probably should have said that. Okay. So ambient temperatures below 32 degrees, and he sees package units running with mechanical cooling on. So he's kind of curious what's going on. All right. So he had an amazing question, especially for a new technician. And what this tells me is that he went to a place where he actually learned something when he was educated. Okay. Because he's curious why these AC units are running and why the expansion valves are operating properly if they don't have the designed pressure drop across the expansion valve. So I really like that question. That's a really good one. And that shows me that you really are thinking something really technical. Good for you, bud. Okay. So first and foremost, you never know when you're working commercial industrial, you can have units that run very critical rooms when it can be 32 degrees outside and there can be a demand for that unit to run. It could be running a computer server room or something like that. Okay. And I know that. Next thing is, again, you never know what they're doing with that building. I have a lot of my locations that the economizers are actually disabled and they're using minimum outside air only. So they're basically just using it for minimum outside air dampers. Okay. So, and that's a particular customer that wanted them set up that way. Okay. But the question about the expansion valve and the pressure drop and how that expansion valve can operate properly is a really, really good question. And let's go into this a little bit. Okay. So when you have an expansion valve, it's meant a thermostatic expansion valve. It's a dumb expansion valve. Okay. It's meant to have refrigerant going through it at a certain velocity, right? They measure that in the pressure drop across the TXV. So you can have liquid pressure at a certain saturation temperature on one side of the TXV, but then on the other side, it's going to be liquid vapor mix and it's boiling off the gas as it's going into the evaporator. Okay. And that refrigerant has to go through that valve at a certain speed or certain velocity. And again, we measure that with the pressure drop. So your question, what he's asking is when it's really cold outside, obviously the pressure drop is going to be a lot lower. Okay. And so how is it working? Again, there's a couple different variables in there. We don't know if that particular package unit, has some sort of capacity control. Okay. Sometimes you can have some sort of a hot gas bypass valve that because they're feeding a critical room, they can operate in much lower ambience. Sometimes they'll put cold weather kits on the package units, fan cycle controls and different things like that. Definitely having crankcase heaters on them. So it really depends on the situation and what's going on. But that is a really good point and a really good thing to think about because you have design conditions of a system. And if it's operating outside of design conditions, lots of weird stuff can happen and the unit will not be predictable anymore. Okay. So it's really important that we understand, that. And again, good on you for asking that question, bud. That is a really cool one. Let me see. For defrost clock, after power supply, you power the other two on the open side. David, YouTubing, you're going to have to send me an email, bud. I need maybe a picture, hvacrvideos@gmail.com, and I can try to answer that. Okay. I'm reading through the chat right now. Again, guys, if I miss your questions, feel free to send them through email or keep repeating them because I see a bunch on Instagram right now. But let me know. Okay. Shoot me an email. All right. So reading through here right now. Let's see. What do I mean by forced to do it, like withholding ad revenue? Cyborg Sheep. So basically my views are through the floor right now. We're going back to the question about YouTube. So Cyborg Sheep asks, what do I mean by forced to do it? So YouTube and Instagram and all these different social media platforms are forcing you to use their short form content. So I'm still going to make long form, but I have to make short form in there too. So what I mean is my views and the videos are not being recommended to people anymore. So the channel's not growing as fast because they're changing their formats and they want you to do short form content. So now the strategy as a content creator, if you want people to consume your content, is, at least my understanding of what we have to do right now, is majority of our views are going to be coming from short form content. So you have to hook someone with your short form content, get them interested in, and then direct them over to your normal videos to get the views like we used to get months ago. So within the last 5 months, I've seen crazy drops in like new views. I get consistent on my normal viewers and stuff, like the people that watch my videos and are already subscribed, but it's the new people coming to it. So let me see what else we got going on in the chat right now. How is my home AC project going? My home AC project is doing good. I still have another video that I actually am probably going to work on editing, maybe on the flight this upcoming weekend, but it's doing good. I'm basically at a standstill because I need to pick which equipment I'm going to get. I was so close to AHR. Like I was a month and a half away from AHR and I was like, you know what? I had an idea what equipment I was going to buy, but I want to go to AHR and see if there's anything new coming out that maybe I'm interested in. So I'll go to AHR, check out some new equipment. And if I don't see anything that changes my mind, then I know what I'm going to get. And then once I do that, I just got to jump into it. So, but I'll be releasing that video because I did some more air sealing on my house and reduced my blower door number significantly from the last video. So, all right, reading through here, reading through the chat right now. Okay. All right. I already answered that one. So anyways, that again, the person that asked me the question about the TXV pressure drop in the package unit, that was an awesome question. So good job on that. In my recent compressor video where I had the compressor that failed over the weekend and then I cut the compressor open at the end, why was I not brazing with nitrogen while I was brazing the system up? Okay. I would like to know, okay, if anybody, I'm going to give it a second and then I'll get back to the question, but I want to know someone in the chat right now. If you're watching this, in my recent video where I changed a compressor over a weekend, I think it was last Thursday, why could I not have brazed with nitrogen? Like what was preventing me from brazing with nitrogen when I was changing that compressor? I'm asking the chat right now, see if anybody knows where I'm going to go with this. So I'm going to let them chime in and then I'll answer the question here in just a second. So, reading through here, let's see if any answers come into the chat right now. I'm going to go to another question and then I'll get back to it. So on that same compressor job, why in the heck did I not put in a flare dryer like I normally do? Well, first, if you listened in the video, I had an old 30 cubic inch dryer in the shop that was 5/8. It was sealed and packaged. I just hadn't used it in years. So I wanted to use that up. So that was the main reason. And the next thing is that that location was about an hour and a half away from my shop. And I was just like, I'm just going to braze it. No questions about it instead of having flare connections. So, okay, there we go. John, yep. Tab high. So yes, a bunch of people, exactly. Good. Awesome. I really like this. A bunch of people in the chat are answering this all in different ways. So good on you guys. So the reason why I wasn't brazing with nitrogen was it wasn't even a pumped down system. I had isolated the compressor. Well, it wasn't pumped down at first, okay? But I isolated the compressor by valving off the high side and the low side and only having to recover the refrigerant in that small little section of the compressor. So I had no flow. There was nowhere for the nitrogen to go unless the perfect situation where we had one piston right at the right level to where something was still escaping through there. And I don't even think that's even possible. Because the refrigerant is not necessarily going to flow through the compressor, okay? Because it's a valve system. So with that being said, the nitrogen would have just made my braze joints pop out and they wouldn't have went all the way through. Now, later in the video, when I went and changed the filter dryer, I pumped down the system. I stopped the flow coming out of the receiver, let the compressor run, the refrigerant backed up in the condenser and the receiver, but then everything coming out of the condenser didn't have refrigerant anymore. So I opened it up, brazed in a new liquid line dryer, pulled an evacuation, and started it back up. But why didn't I braze with nitrogen then? Well, here's the deal, okay? There's sometimes that I have to make a decision based off of my experience and things that I have run into, okay? Doesn't mean that this is how everybody else has to do this. In my experience, when you have a system that is pumped down, it's not a good idea to introduce nitrogen into that, even if it's a pumped down side, okay? You run the risk of over pressurizing the system. And if you over pressurize the system, nothing in that system is leak free. So you're assuming that the valve in the compressor and the valve on the receiver are holding the refrigerant back. But what happens if something slightly leaks, okay? Or what happens if your nitrogen pressure exceeds what's in the system already when it's pumped down? Then you have the potential of pushing nitrogen into that refrigerant. And I do know some people that have some, actually Rick from HVACR Survival, I'm pretty sure he has it on a video somewhere where he ran into this problem, where he was pressure testing something, if I remember right, with nitrogen while it was pumped down, and it actually pushed the nitrogen into the system and it ended up having to change all the refrigerant, if I remember right. It was a whole ordeal that he ran into. So it's just, you have to think about it. You can't just put nitrogen on there and assume it's going to go where it's supposed to go. Okay. Now, if I was to install taps, then, you know, have some sort of pressure relief. Yeah, you could do it that way. So let me see what else we got going on in the chat. Exactly. People wouldn't trust the valves. Things still leak through. Exactly. Okay. So nothing against the person that asked. It's just, it was a great question. So let's see. So I had a question on how to set a pressure control when you have all these different refrigerants. Okay. So first and foremost, when you are setting low pressure controls and high pressure controls, you want to look at a couple different variables. A very, very important, probably one of the most important ones, is you want to look at the compressor manufacturer's installation and operation manuals. Okay. If you didn't know this, Emerson Copeland, right, has a lot of good information and a lot of good apps, and they have their AE tech bulletins. And if you're working on a particular compressor, there is going to be a tech bulletin for that compressor that you can look up, and it's going to have all kinds of valuable information on how that compressor is supposed to operate and what the operating envelope is. Okay. And it's really cool because it gives you information like what's the lowest pressure control setting, cutout setting, what's the highest cutout setting on a high pressure safety. And it's in the compressor manufacturer's information. So that's one of the most important things you want to take into play. Okay. Just look up Copeland Mobile, Copeland AE bulletins. And guys, you know, when these manufacturers like Sporlan, they have Sporlan 90-30-1 and Copeland AE bulletin 1294.2, whatever it is, right? Majority of the time, if you just go to the internet and say Copeland CR compressor document, you know, just a vague term, boom, it'll come up too. So you don't need to know the numbers all the time. Okay. But look at the compressor manufacturer. The next thing you really, really want to pay attention to is what conditions your equipment's operating in. What's the ambient temperature outside? Because if the ambient temperature is too low, the refrigerant's going to react to the ambient temperature when it's pumped down, right? So the refrigerant's sitting up at the condensing unit pumped down, and the ambient temperature is negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? And you're working with whatever refrigerant you have. So look at negative 15 on whatever refrigerant, and you're going to notice that the pressure is a lot lower. So that means the pressure differential when that liquid line solenoid valve opens up is going to be really low, and sometimes the ambient temperature outside can affect the refrigerant and cool it down so much that it won't be driven through the system to turn on the low pressure control because you have the setting too high. Okay. So you need to understand the conditions you're installing the pressure control in and how you're setting it. You know, on old like legacy systems, and I actually used to work on these. We used to work on systems that didn't have temperature controllers, and they were just operated off of the pressure control, and it would use the pressure temperature chart, and you would look at all these different conditions and you would set the pressure control to maintain the temperature in the box because it was just an on-off system. Okay. So You just have to understand how pressure controls work, and you have to understand the outdoor ambient environment and look at the compressor manufacturer and look at their tech data. Okay. It's very important, and that'll tell you how to set those pressure controls 100%. Okay. All right. Looking through the chat. Let's see. Why go with a heat pump for heat when it's only capable of 20-degree TD, but a natural gas produces 120-degree Fahrenheit output temp? Well, Dale, let's look at it like this. The bottom line as to why willingly or not we are going to electrification is because right now the research that the people that are making these decisions is telling them that the pollution basically is worse than so we're having to change things because of the emissions and different things, right? So that part. Okay. But why is it that people are going with a heat pump? Okay. Well, Dale, one thing to understand is heat pumps are becoming more and more efficient these days. Okay. And, the old thing saying that the heat pump couldn't work in an ambient below 20 degrees. Well, that's not necessarily the case anymore, because when you have a lot of these super high-end inverter driven systems, they can operate in much colder ambience and still pull heat out of the air, right? Because there's heat. Well, anyways, but yeah, I was going to try to explain something else, but I don't think I can properly explain that. So, all right. I'm reading through the chat right now. Compared to the enthalpy chart in the compressor docs, that's exactly right. Hello to everybody. Look at that. Ryan Hughes was in here right now from Hughesman HVAC channel. What's up, bud? Jason Johnson, all kinds of great people in here. John Harrell says bad building science is where we need to start. Oh yeah, I agree. I do agree. The whole building science of this industry, that side is completely, it's just now getting popular. But it's been one of the most messed up parts about the industry for so many years, right? But now we're just starting to pay attention to it. And it's not even popular yet. It's just starting to make waves where people are really starting to understand that, you can control things better. My house, okay, I will tell you guys right now that I live in an 1,850 square foot home in Southern California with a design low temperature of 32 degrees and a design high temperature, I think, of 95 ambient, which it gets much hotter than that. But I have a 4-ton, 100,000 BTU furnace on my house with a 4-ton cooling package. Okay. Both of those are ridiculously oversized, cooling and heating. Okay. And this is typical in California. This is the building science side of this, right? Looking at the structure and realizing that people were oversizing equipment and it was super leaky. And then now we're trying to solve these leaks, and we're realizing how much that can affect people's health and how it can better them and all this different stuff. So I think the building science side is really fun. And I am fortunate enough to have some really, really cool friends in the building science community. So I'm getting some really cool education right now. So it's awesome. All right, let's see what else. All right, cool. That lots of great commenters and stuff going in it right now, guys. Please, please, please smash the thumbs up button. I think YouTube alone, I'm looking at 141 viewers and only 77 likes. Smash that. Get that number up there, guys. Thank you very much. Same with all the other social media platforms too, okay? So Nick, that was a great question about the pressure controls, okay? Nick also had another really good question, and I liked this one because these are fun ones because I've been in these weird struggles before myself too. So again, yeah, I hope you didn't mind I said your name there, Nick. My bad. Yeah, don't you know? I said I wasn't going to say his name, and then I did say his name, but I don't think it was a bad question. I think that was a great question. But so anyways, Nick was asking, how do you determine if a receiver is too small when you're pumping down a refrigeration system? So again, you have a refrigeration system, you close the king valve on the king valve is only on the receiver, guys, on the outlet of the receiver. The queen valve's on the inlet of the receiver, okay? So don't ask me why I know that crap. I don't know. But anyways, when you close the king valve down, you're going to back the refrigerant up in the receiver and the condenser, but you still have to have room for that refrigerant to expand within that condenser, okay? And so when you're pumping it down and it's taking a long time to pump down, okay? And I'll give you guys some more key phrases in here, okay? But when it's taking a long time to pump down, he's wondering, how does he know if the receiver is just too small? Like how's he going to know if there's enough storage space in that system? Because he's curious why it's taking so long to pump down. So one of the key things I'm going to tell you guys right now is a very common, popular thing that I see in the restaurants. He's working at a restaurant. Okay. When you tell me that you have a refrigeration system at a restaurant and it's on reach-in coolers, that's a dead giveaway for something. Okay. Reach-in cooler condensing units, when they're remoted to the roof, oftentimes, I'd say 99% of the time, the receivers are never big enough, because the manufacturers, they're buying off the shelf refrigeration equipment at these restaurants majority of the time when they do these remote setups. Okay. I've worked with some really big nationwide chains that had like cookie cutter restaurants, and they'd have a design person just spec a condensing unit, but he didn't know where it was going to be installed. Majority of the time, when you have smaller tonnage, like 1 horsepower and below the condensing unit size, oftentimes the receivers are only for like a 10, 15 foot length. They're only sized for that. So when you run line sets 50 to 75 feet across the building, there's never enough room to properly pump that system down. So number one, restaurants and reach-in coolers, always assume it's undersized and do your research. But the next most important thing that you need to know about a system that's taken a long time to pump down, okay? First off, you should do some sort of a compressor check using like Copeland's mobile app. You can input the compressor data, the specs, the amps that it's running, the voltage that it's actually being delivered to it. And it'll tell you whether or not that compressor is operating within its operating envelope. Okay. So that's one good way. Next thing though, is you need to have a service port or service hose for your gauges connected on the high side of the system, but you should have it on the discharge line. Best case scenario, when you're pumping a refrigeration system down, you have your low side hose on the suction service valve, and you have your high side hose on the discharge line, not the liquid line receiver. Okay. That's the best case scenario, but it doesn't always work that way because sometimes you don't have a high side service port on the discharge line. But if you do, you should always be connected there, because you're going to have a significant difference. Or I'm sorry, sometimes it won't sense the high side pressure. So when you have it connected on the receiver, you won't get an accurate high side, and you might get a liquid line side going out of the receiver. So you can't really see. You really need to see high side and low side when the system's operating. And if it's taken a long time to pump down, you should be reflected in your high side if it's overcharged. Okay. So that's something to think about, but do your research. And that is a great question, bud. So hopefully I answered it. I know I went off on a tangent there. See what else. Have you ever set off the fire alarm on accidents? MF Farms. I was working in a shopping mall. I can say this because this place, I don't even think it exists anymore, but I was working at a GameWorks, you know, the giant mega arcade, 2-story arcade in a shopping mall. I was working at one that used to be at the Ontario Mills and mall in Southern California. And they had their on-site engineers that fixed everything at GameWorks, right? But they would call us in for the difficult things. So I get there and they're like, yeah, this smoke detector, something, I think it was giving them a trouble signal or something like that. And this is when I learned my lesson. Don't ever touch a smoke detector in a shopping mall. Okay. Just don't touch them. Just don't. All right. So I went up there and I went to go pull the cover off the smoke detector, and it set off the tamper sensor in the smoke detector. But the way that they had this wired up was the tamper sensor set off the fire alarm, right? Because it's a shopping mall in the public. They want, you know, whatever. They want to know if the smoke detectors are working. But when it set off the fire alarm in the shopping mall, it turned on the emergency evacuation fans in half of the shopping mall. So we're talking 15 of these giant exhaust fans that are supposed to be sucking all the air out of the building turn on, right? And I'm like, and the alarms are going off and mall security's running over, and I'm standing there holding the cover to the smoke detector on a 16-foot ladder going, what the heck is going on? Like, so yeah, I've set off fire alarms before. I've been on the roof before. I kid you not, at a shopping mall. I was just working my way, working on a roof. I don't remember what restaurant that was. And I'm just working on the ACs. And next thing you know, I kid you not, a hook and ladder truck comes up over the side of the building, and there's a firefighter right there. And they again, shopping malls and smoke detectors, I'm telling you, they're a nightmare. This particular smoke detector, this was a new building that I had taken over. And when I turned off the AC, they had it wired in a way, again, it sent a trouble signal, and then that set off the fire alarm. It was like, oh my gosh, man. But I actually enjoy working on duct detectors and smoke detectors. But when you're in shopping malls, you need to make sure that everything is disarmed. You need to call the location security department. You need to go to the mall security. I mean, oh my gosh, just cover your bases when you're working on malls and smoke detectors. All right. Let's see what else. That's funny. Look at that. John Harrell says that happened to him at a Kmart in Jersey. That's awesome, man. I mean, it's, after the fact, we can laugh about it. In the moment, it's one of the most stressful things you ever go through. But in the end, yeah, it's awesome for sure. So, yeah, Tony is saying, obviously, it was not wired correctly. That should have been a trouble alarm. 100% should have been a trouble alarm. I'm going to tell you something. Majority of the, I've literally, I do a lot of, all the work I do is restaurants, right? And I work on a lot of duct detectors. They used to confuse the heck out of me. And I finally just figured them out because it drove me nuts. Nobody at my company at the time could figure them out. And it was just, they were so confusing. And then finally I dove into them, and then I learned way too much. Okay. So I do a lot of smoke detector work, and I have been to countless restaurants that had been open for 5 to 7 years. And for whatever reason, I've literally had this happen at multiple locations. Okay. Where I go in there and they're like, smoke alarm's going off. And I go up there and I go to reset it, and the smoke detector won't reset. None of them will reset. And you're like, what's going on? The systems were all wired wrong. Like, I don't understand. From day one, they were wired at these restaurants to where they would never go off, or like it was just a disaster. And I have rewired buildings that were 5 to 7 years in operation, and knowing that the smoke detectors had never, ever worked there. One time I was at a local restaurant chain and I was working there, and oftentimes I've worked on them so much that I get used to them, right? So majority of the time I will have the customer call out their fire alarm company, right? Or the burglar alarm company, and have their technicians come on site when I'm doing big jobs with smoke detectors. And I came across one where I met the guy on the site. He helped me, or I wired it all in. He tested everything. Everything was working fine, right? I had to go back out there because there ended up being a problem. And when I went back out there, they sent out another service tech. Okay. And this service tech is way too vocal with me. And we're talking, and he's telling me, he goes, what the hell's going on here? My stuff was A-okay. The alarm tech had bypassed the alarm system by using resistors on the wrong end, because the end of line resistors that we use, they're in smoke detectors. Those are what signal trouble conditions and let you know if it's a fire alarm or a trouble alarm, right? So you'll put resistors across certain terminals. He put resistors on the alarm side. So the loop that was going out to my panels was being ignored because the resistor at the panel was in the way. Like, oh my gosh, I've had so many different things, so many systems out there wired by technicians, wired by alarm companies, that were all completely wrong. Now, to be fair, okay, I was one of those people. Now, I've never went to those extents, but when I didn't understand how smoke detectors work, before I figured them out, I made some mistakes, and I made incorrect wiring, and I messed things up, and I learned from it. Okay. So I'm not trying to say that I've never made those mistakes, but I've come across a lot of them, which makes me realize that, and I realized this a long time ago, that a good majority of our trade, myself included, was thrown out into the industry way too fast and wasn't trained properly. Okay. I wasn't trained properly. I learned through a lot of rough mistakes that I can promise you restaurants and customers these days wouldn't accept and would fire your company for. I came up in a forgiving time when I could make those mistakes. The industry isn't very forgiving anymore. So we have to be better technicians, and we have to better ourselves and understand the equipment we're installing. That's a duty of us as technicians. Even if our companies are sending us out there, we need to be able to be vocal and say, I don't understand how to work on this. And, I don't feel comfortable, and don't get in over your head kind of stuff. So, all right, let's see what else. I plan on Ryan is saying that he enjoyed the videos I made on smoke detectors. I really do like the smoke detector ones. I'm actually gonna I've been wanting to get back into the training board stuff, and I'm gonna make a training board for that whole exhaust wiring system that I talked about at the beginning of the stream. So I finished a project the last week where I was working on it for like 4 days, where I was rewiring an entire smart hood system at a restaurant, and I finished that up. Now, I didn't make a video, but because of various reasons at the location, but I want to make a training board and do more training materials on exhaust systems and proper shutdown sequences and why we might turn on the exhaust fans or turn off the exhaust fans when there's a fire. I'd love to get into that a little bit more too. So stay tuned. We'll do more of it. All right. Coffee Reek is saying that it happens on the industrial side too. Yeah. There's a lot of people that have just figured it out. Let's see. Tony's saying that he once had an electrical contractor run rigid pipe to a Liebert unit for an internal smoke head, but he installed the rigid through the access panel of the unit when they could not be accessed. That is ridiculous, Tony. I have seen some stuff like that. Maybe not that bad, but I've seen some crazy stuff where people were just plain lazy. I've seen compressors mounted outside of the unit, literally piped in, sitting next to the unit because someone didn't want to lift the compressor in the unit. I've seen that before. I've seen some crazy stuff, but yeah, that's nuts, man. Let's see. When's the next podcast? John, actually in talks right now with Hvacr about doing some cool stuff. And so stay tuned. The podcast, I mean, I've kind of talked about it, not a lot, but I've officially launched a podcast. There's only one episode on. Actually, there's 3 episodes on right now. I uploaded some video footage on there that's just audio from it too. But if you search HVACR podcast on any of the podcast platforms, any of the major ones, you're going to find me. I'm on Apple, all those ones, right? Myself, I'm going to have friends on there too, but Bill Russell is going to be a pretty permanent co-host on the podcast, and we're in talks with a really cool manufacturer that's going to be a good guest on there. We're not going to reveal anything yet, but stay tuned. Check out the podcast. Go subscribe. There'll be more footage or more content coming up on there too soon. So, all right, let's see. In my recent video, I released a shorter video about fixing the floor on a walk-in freezer, and someone had made a good comment. In the video, when I was sealing up the threshold, I sealed all corners of the threshold so that way there was no potential air escape from the box or from the floor. And the person had mentioned that, you know, when the box temperature drops, you know, or rises, that there might be air pockets underneath that metal that would lift it up. I agree. That is a good point and a good thing to think about. I honestly don't, though, in that situation, I don't think that was airtight enough. Even though I put silicone everywhere, I honestly don't believe that that threshold was completely touching all the silicone. So I agree, though, that that was a good point to bring up. So drink this real quick. All right. David YouTubing. I don't have Venmo, so I don't think I do. I have no idea how to. Dude, I'm an idiot when it comes to social media stuff. As far as the channel goes, for those that want to support the channel, if you're interested in doing so, the easiest way to support the channel is watch the videos. Just trust me, just watch the videos, okay? But if there's other ways you can support the channel, you can become a YouTube channel member. You can donate via Patreon. There's PayPal on there. A couple different ways that you can donate to the channel. So if you go to my website, hvacrvideos.com, there's all the information on my website. There's also merch that's available on the website. And also in almost any one of my videos in the show notes, there's links to all that stuff. So, but again, the easiest way to support the channel is just watch the videos. So, all right. Why would an evaporator superheat go from 12 to 0 like it's flooding on a walk-in cooler TXV at 37-degree box temp when the charge is good? Well, there's a couple different things that can be going on. First off, when you say the superheat could go from 12 to 0, okay, is that something that's happening all the time? Is it back and forth? Because we might call that a hunting expansion valve. That can happen when the valve is not sized correctly. That's a very common symptom of a valve that is not sized correctly, where it can be hunting. It can also be a bad valve, okay? But there's a lot of different variables into that one. So I would look into that valve, make sure it's sized right, make sure the sensing bulb's in the right place, and go from there. All right, let me see what else. How is it that I communicate to my customers that, you know, I have to do multiple things? So this was a great question. The person was asking me like, hey, my recent video where I had a compressor replacement and I changed the compressor, but then I had to change a sensor. Okay. So his question is, how is it that my customers don't think I'm trying to rip them off? Like, I told them it was a compressor, and then now I need to change something else after the compressor. What the heck, you know? Okay. First and foremost, I never give definite answers, like definite scenarios or solutions to a problem, right? I never tell a customer that all I need to do is change this compressor and then it's going to be fine. I don't say that. Okay. The way that I approach a customer when I give an estimate or let them know what I need to order is I say, look, here's the problem. This unit has a bad compressor. I have no idea what made that compressor go bad. And then I educate them. Compressors don't go bad on their own. Okay. Compressors don't go bad in 10 years. They don't go bad in 15 years just because. Okay. Now there's always a small percentage. Now I'm telling you, the viewers, this, there's always a small percentage of a compressor that you might have a failure, but the odds are it's not going to go bad on its own. Okay. So when I tell my customer that it has a bad compressor, I say, we need to change the compressor, and then we're going to further investigate and figure out why the compressor went bad. Okay. So that's one way. The next thing is, I'm not interested in working for a customer that will not let me fix something, you know, within reason, the right way. Okay. I don't want to work for someone who's going to nickel and dime me. And I don't want to work for someone who doesn't want me to do things right, because in the end, it's going to come back to bite me in the butt. So I try my best to work for customers that understand and appreciate the fact that we're going to fix it right. Okay. Within reason. I understand money and costs and different things. So how do so I let them know ahead of time. I don't just tell them like, hey, it's a bad compressor. I say, we have to change the compressor and then we'll figure out, you know, so dig through it. Have I ever put a wiring panel on and the screw shorts it out? MF Farms. That's a good question, bud. So the question is, have I ever put a wiring panel on and the screw shorts it out? Yeah, I've done it. I've done electrical boxes, trying to screw an electrical box that was over stuffed full of wires and trying to put it back and bzz, something buzzes out or something like that. Yeah, I've had that happen, but I do have a really good, funny story. Funny because nobody got hurt, but serious because someone could have died. Okay. But in the end, it was funny to laugh about it because nobody had gotten hurt. Okay. Understand that. So I got called out to a restaurant for exhaust fan not working in the middle of the night. We need you now. Like, my kitchen's filling up with smoke. Then as I'm driving there, heading to there, right? Because middle of the night, I'm 24-hour call, right? So I heading out there because they had to, you know, they were going to have to shut down kind of thing. And that didn't happen back then. So as I'm driving out there, they call me back and they said, now my walk-in's not working. My walk-in cooler's not working. And then now another exhaust fan's not working. And I'm like, damn, what's happening? You know? All right. So I'm heading out there. It takes me about an hour and a half to get there. I get there, I get on site, and I'm walking around, and I have single phase power at my 3-phase exhaust fans. Like, what's going on here? You know, I'm missing a leg of power. So I'm tracing back, and I'm a little bit more involved in things probably. So be cautious. Don't be doing things that I do just because you see it in my videos. Make sure that your company is okay with what you do. Okay. So I go beyond my stuff and I investigate a little deeper, right? So I realize that I don't have 3-phase at my exhaust fan. So I go down to the electrical panel. I pull the electrical panel apart where the power comes from and the breaker's at, and I don't have 3-phase at the breaker. Okay. So then I go to the bus bars and I don't have 3-phase at the bus bars. I'm missing a leg, you know? I didn't notice anything yet though, when I had opened the breaker panel. So put the breaker panel back together, go outside to the mains, and I test power at the mains, and I have 3-phase. So I have 3-phase power at the main, but then I go to there's a, where the sub pan or there's another panel that has, because you have the building main and then you have multiple mains that split off between breaker panels, right? So, but I found one of the mains that had, after the breaker, had lost a phase. And it was a mess, right? There was a fuse there. The fuse was blown. So I called an electrician. The electrician came out. Him and I were both out there figuring this out. Long story short, they had a handyman there that day. Okay. And the handyman was hanging a TV. And I kid you not, I'm not joking with you. Okay. The manager said the handyman was hanging the TV and he was drilling it into the wall. And next thing you know, he just left, like literally just bounced. Didn't say a thing to the restaurant and just left. So then they called us out there. They didn't tell me this when I was on my way. and he was hanging a TV and he ran a 6-inch lag or 8-inch lag. It was freaking long. I don't know what he was doing. And he ran it right into the back of the breaker panel and hit the bus bar with the freaking lag. Like, and mind you though, right? You know, and I know that a lag doesn't go through metal. So he had to pre-drill that and miss the bus bar when he was drilling it with the drill bit. And then he goes and puts a lag in there and freaking hits the bus bar and blows the bus bar open. The electrician, it melted the wire coming out the bottom of the panel as it went underground. So myself and the electrician that night were pulling wires underground to replace the broken wire. It was a giant mess, and it was all because of the handyman. So then the kicker of this all, guys, this is the funniest part, right? The handyman worked for a company, okay? And so we give my bill and we give the electrician's bill. And I kid you not, between me and the electrician and all the work we had to do, his was really expensive. It was like somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000 just for that night because of all the work we had to do, because the dude blew up a wire and blew up a bus bar, all this stuff, right? So we both gave our bills in, and then the handyman company called us, the owner, and he's like, hey, man, business owner to business owner. He's like, you got to cut me some slack on this bill. And I go, where were you that night? And he's like, what do you mean? And I go, where were you? And he goes, I was at home. And I go, yeah, I was on the job. I'm not cutting you slack. I said, it'd be one thing if you came out there and were trying to correct your wrongs when I was there. Yeah, maybe I'd feel compassion for you, but heck no, man. Pay my bill. That guy straight asked me to try to give him a discount. Get out of here. All right. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat. Reading through here. Yeah, if you guys have questions, you need to put it into the caps lock. That way I can see them. Am I training a new tech? I am looking for a new technician right now. We're in talks with a few people. We've called a few people, but we're always looking for more resumes. So if you're interested in working with me, you're in the Southern California area, specifically the Inland Empire. If you're experienced in restaurant refrigeration, I'm potentially looking for you, but it's got to be the right experience. If you're an apprentice that's gone through some sort of trade school, some sort of education program and has some basics, I'd be willing to train too. So I'm looking for potentially 1 or 2 people. So shoot me an email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Send me a resume. We'll talk. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. Going right here. In my recent video where I did a walk-in freezer floor, where was the door heater? I actually got quite a few people asking me that. Where was the door heater at? That particular restaurant, for whatever reason, the door heater did not run underneath the threshold. We'll actually know why. It was a 2-sided door heater. So it came down from the top with one wire, went down, and then looped and went back up the same path. So it didn't run in there because the door has a heated door sweep. So there's a plug on the top of the door, plugs into the wall. And on the bottom, there's a Moleon heater in the rubber threshold. So that's how they get away without having a floor heater on that particular freezer. Cool. And this is another really good question. This is a great one, actually. So this technician had emailed me, and he says that when he's on jobs, he's new. Okay, he's working in the commercial industrial side, but he's new to it. And when he's on jobs, you know, he's all excited and he gets so anxious and so worked up that he seems to stumble over the basics and he screws everything up. And he's curious how he can overcome that. Okay, first step in overcoming that problem is realizing that it's happening, okay? Because there's a lot of people out there that are just overly cocky and they don't want to admit that they're screwed it up, okay? Good on you for realizing that you're making that mistake. The next thing, first, you need to chill out, okay? I know that's difficult. I know it's hard, but you need to find something that calms you down, okay? First thing, I drink coffee every single morning. I realized, because I'm an idiot, that I was drinking this one particular coffee for a while, but I noticed that every morning that I would go to the office and not go into the field, I'd be sitting at my desk shaking, like, what's going on? And I'd have anxiety and built up. I was just so like on edge. I'm an idiot, guys. I didn't realize that the coffee that I was addicted to was an espresso roast. So I was drinking 2.5 cups of espresso every morning instead of just regular coffee. And I didn't realize that. Okay. So first and foremost, the reason why I said that is you need to relax with the things that you're consuming. In this trade, you need to be 100% focused. Okay. So if you're drinking energy drinks in the morning, be cautious, because if they're crashing you or they're messing with you, causing anxiety like my freaking espresso roast was, you know, you got to change something. So I've since realized that I was drinking the wrong coffee and I went to like regular coffee. So, you know, that's one thing. But yeah, calm down, do whatever you got to do. The next thing is don't overthink it. That's one of the most important pieces of troubleshooting advice I can give to most technicians. I don't know everything. And when I've figured certain things out, what I've usually realized is majority of the time I was overthinking it. Something was wrong. I've told countless technicians when I'm on the phone with them and they're getting frustrated because they can't figure something out. I'm like, guys, what I need you to do is chill out, put your phone down, put your tools down, take a break, go chill out, go have a soda, go get a bite to eat, chill out, and come back to the job site. Okay. So don't get overly excited. And if you do, you got to figure out how to chill out, take a break, relax. Okay. The next thing, one piece of advice I can give your brain to prepare for jobs, to help you better yourself as a technician. One piece of advice that has worked really well for me and everybody that I've recommended it to. When you are driving to work, when you are driving in your work van, when it's safe, you need to be kind of thinking, rehearsing. First off, listen to podcasts, things that are going to better you. Okay. But the next thing, don't overthink about a job, but instead, while you're driving to it, think about the sequence of operation of that particular system. This is where I find this to be really good advice. Okay. When you're driving to a job that's been driving you nuts, you know it's going to be difficult. Instead of thinking about what you're going to do when you get there and how you're going to attack the system, think about the particular system and its sequence of operation. Just go through that, okay? In your head, okay, I'm going to work on a walk-in cooler. What's the sequence of operation? Don't think of that location. Think of the system. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. If you work that kind of stuff through, instead of trying to solve the problem in your head of what you're going to do, that is how you can, you know, really dig into things and learn how not to overthink things, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. Let's see, reading through the chat right now. Jason Johnson says, if it's not a 3D, change 20% mineral oil for POE. Oh, okay. I'm assuming he's saying, you have all your restaurants with 22 systems around 407. No, I'm reading through, seeing someone must have asked a question about a change out. Oh, okay. He's saying Joshua had asked him, what happens if the customer wants to put 407 in an R22 air conditioner? Yeah, you need to do the proper oil change and convert it over, but don't do it on 3D scroll compressors. If you're working on a 3D scroll compressor from Danfoss or Train or whatever, Danfoss would just be a man-your up. If it's the 3D scroll, you do not want to use an alternative. Okay. You cannot do any of the goofy stuff where you use these refrigerants like 427A, like me, because the supply house told me, yeah, it'll work fine. And I put it in a 3D scroll compressor, and then I ruined two 10-ton 3D scroll compressors in the same week. Long story short, I learned that, yeah, don't use that alternative. Only if it has the right oil in it. So, is there a limit on line set lengths on a cooler you have done with a 500-foot line set? Joshua, it depends on how the system was engineered. Yes, there's going to be some sort of a limit. Majority of the time, they will not let you go 500 feet. Majority of the time, it's like 1 to 200 feet is the max. There is things you can do, though. If you do have long line sets, you need to get an engineer involved. And you can calculate and do some things that will allow you to continue to have a long line set like that. Proper oil practices and piping practices really come into play. Having the right size risers, the right size traps, all that different stuff, the right size line size, the right line sizes, I should have said. Those are all things that can really come into play when you have really long line sets. But bottom line, you need to reach out to the equipment manufacturer and they will help you to size that. Oh, the other thing too, to the new tech that gets overly anxious and makes mistakes, try not to get tunnel vision. And that was the thing I was trying to say. When instead of thinking of the exact location and the exact piece of equipment and getting stuck in tunnel vision on that, that was the point I was trying to make earlier. start just thinking about the general sequence of operation. And then that way, when you get there, you're just well versed in what to do. So, all right. Well, I think it is about that time, everybody. I am going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I want to say thank you very much for everybody that's out there watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel, turning on the notifications, and share the videos if you like them. Really please help this channel, because the social media platforms are really messing with us right now. So I'd really appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and cue up the outro music. And again, I appreciate you. And we will catch you on the next one.